Good evening. This is Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. We're coming to you live from the CNN News18 Federal Bank Primetime Studio. The Supreme Court today, in a landmark ruling, has said that there has to be a subcategorization among scheduled castes and scheduled tribes for who is the most deserving for reservation. The court ruling was by a 7-judge constitutional bench in a 6:1 majority judgment. Also said that quota within quota is permissible, that SCs and STs cannot be considered as one homogeneous entity. But perhaps the one controversial part about today's judgment is that the court has extended the logic of creamy layer, which is so far, this concept of creamy layer so far has only been applicable for OBCs. Now the court is saying that creamy layer has to apply to SCs and STs as well. And that the creamy layer, those who have availed the benefits of reservation among SCs and STs, have to be taken out of the purview of affirmative action or the fold of affirmative action. But for all this to happen, first there has to be enumeration, which means there has to be a census. And then which means there also has to be a caste census, because how do you identify those groups for subcategorization if you do not have a caste census? That, the opposition is saying, the BJP is loath to announcing. So the question is, will the centre now bite that bullet?
आज ये साबित हो गया कि हम समाजवादी लोग जिन बातों को लेकर सवाल उठाते रहे, वो बातें हमारी न्याय संगत बातें थी। कास्ट सेंसस तो होना ही चाहिए और आज के फैसले के बाद तो सरकार को सोचना चाहिए।
Reservation can only be given to people who don't belong to the creamy layer. Those who are in creamy layer will have to fend for themselves.
जितना मेरा आप लोग इंसल्ट करना चाहते हैं, आप खुशी से करिए, आप रोज करिए, मगर एक बात मत भूलिए, जाति जनगणना को हम यहां पास करके दिखाएंगे।
Let's get you an overview of what the Supreme Court said today. It's a historic ruling. Number one, the court said that quota within quota is not against the principle of equality. Equality before the law, of course, is a fundamental right. It has also gone on to say that scheduled castes cannot be considered a homogeneous group, that states are permitted via powers entrusted to them through the Constitution to create subcategorization or subclasses within SCs and STs. Also, that quota within quota is based on a rational distinction, that there are some people who are deprived even within historically deprived sections. Quota within quota has to be through empirical and quantifiable data, which means that there has to be an enumeration of who is the most deserving. Social status may be different for groups within the SCs and STs. That states must also frame policy to identify who are the creamy layer amongst SCs and STs, just like they have identified creamy layer amongst OBCs. Action of states, of course, will be subject to judicial review, just like the case with any act that is passed in Parliament or in any state assembly. But here is where the political debate stands, where the Congress camp, the opposition, they are very clear that a caste census is imperative. But of course, they are saying this for political reasons. The Congress says caste census is the only way to ensure that there is equal opportunity. The BJP, back in September 2021, when their position on the caste census was not as evolved as it is today, but the BJP's first reaction way back in 2021 was that there were logistical challenges to carry out a caste census in a country like India, where there are 1.3 billion people. The Congress says the caste census is the only way to highlight the socio-economic conditions of the vast majority and who needs the help of reservation. In October of 2023, where the caste census was first revealed in the state of Bihar, the BJP at that time had backed the caste census in principle in the state of Bihar, but it did question the political need for it and the mechanism for it. The Congress has also promised a constitutional amendment to raise the 50% cap, which was a Supreme Court judgment, the famous Indira Sani judgment of the 1990s, which had mandated a 50% cap on quota. The BJP has taken a more political stand. In November of 2023, Amit Shah had said that the BJP is not against caste census, but it is against the census politics around caste census. In April of 2024, in the election campaign, JP Nadda, the BJP president, had said that the BJP opposes the divisive rhetoric around the caste census, not the principle of the caste census itself. I want to first go across on the legal implications of today's verdict. It's a historic verdict in many ways than one. Mahesh Jetpalani, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, is now joining us. Mahesh, thank you very much for speaking with us. But first things first, so quota within quota. There have been judgments in the past where the Supreme Court has frowned upon that principle. Today, the Supreme Court has said that subclassification is a necessity amongst reserved categories. It is possible. It would be erroneous to consider that all SCs and STs are homogeneous or integrated, and that subclassification, just like for OBCs, there is an identification of creamy layer, there has to be an identification of creamy layer for SCs and STs. How do you view today's verdict?
Well, I view it as being unacceptable. I mean, nobody can take objection to what the Supreme Court has held. Quota within quota or sub-classification, which is the same thing, is necessary for the purpose of, including groups, bringing into the reservation category people, those castes which have not got the benefits of they are not adequately represented in getting the benefits of representation. So certainly it's unacceptable. The whole idea, as Justice Gawai said, was to attain true equality. So if certain scheduled castes or scheduled tribes are being left behind in getting the benefits of reservation, you can make a sub-classification based on empirical data that these subcastes are in fact, or the group which is to be subclassified, they are in fact not getting the benefits and they deserve further advancement, and therefore they should be subcategorized to get the benefits which they are so far being deprived of, based on empirical evidence of that need.
Okay, so there are two arguments against this. One is, again, I go back to the E.V. Chennaiya versus State of Andhra Pradesh judgment, the 5-judge bench, which said that in the case of discrimination against SCs and STs, the need for reservation for SCs and STs was based on their discriminatory status, essentially because of social standing and their social and economic or educationally backward status, which is not the case for OBCs, where you've identified basis an economic parameter, which is 8.5 lakh rupees annual income. If you're above that, you're creamy layer and therefore you are removed from the benefits of reservation. So you can't apply what is the yardstick for OBCs and identification of creamy layer. You cannot do that for SCs and STs. The second objection is that the same court, in the case of Dalit Christians and backward caste Muslims, which is frowned upon quota within quota, how do you justify quota within quota in this instance?
As I said, in this instance, you're justifying quota. Again, if you read the judgments, right, you are actually justifying it because the purpose of reservation is to bring people up to a livable standard, to give them the fruits of reservation. So if there's a particular group which is not getting that reservation, you create a sub-classification and afford them that. Now the old judgment, Chennaiya, right, which actually is frowned upon this and which has now been overruled, was based on a construction which the Supreme Court today didn't agree with. It said that basically the states couldn't do the sub-classification because it was a power reserved exclusively under Article 341 for the President.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court today has said that this is a misreading of 341 because 341 only empowers the President on the advice of the Governor of a given state to specify castes who will come within that list for reservation. But it is not the source of the power of reservation. That belongs to Article 15 and 16. So because that was a misconstruction, and Chennaiya held that since it was exclusively the President's prerogative under 341 to do so, and therefore it was frowned upon in that judgment, it was held to be unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's construction now permits sub-classification within the reserved class, the quota within the quota.
Okay. All right. Mahesh Jetpalani, thank you very much for joining us and explaining the legal nuance around this and why today's judgment is historic in many ways. I want to now open this up to our political panels, who are the panelists who are now joining us. Let's try and see if we have All right, we'll try and go across to them. So I want to once again repeat for the benefit of our viewers the highlights, the statutory points of what the court has said today. Number one, that quota within quota is allowed, that subclassification is required amongst reserved categories and it is permissible. Remember, the judgment that it went against today came out in 2004. Initially, it was the then state of Andhra Pradesh, which in the year 2000 had created a subcategory for Madiga reservation within the SCs and STs, and that was challenged in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court in 2004, in that judgment, it said that Madiga reservation within the subcategorization of SCs was against the Constitution, was against the right to equality. But today the court has overruled that. It's a 7-judge bench which has overruled a 5-judge bench by saying that you cannot consider SCs and STs to be integrated or homogeneous. So let me now open this up to our panelists who are joining us. We'll be joined in a moment by Sanju Verma of the BJP, Tushar Gupta, senior journalist, joining us, Dr. Ajay Kumar, national spokesperson of the Congress, Ghanshyam Tiwari, national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, joining us. Dr. Ajay Kumar, let me start off by asking you. So the Supreme Court today, in a landmark judgment, 6 judges to 1, has ruled that quota within quota is permissible, that just like you have a creamy layer for OBCs, which is anyone who is above 8.5 lakhs annual income is not eligible to reservation on the benefits of reservation, the same should be applied for SCs, STs. Does the Congress party welcome this?
Obviously, it is a good decision by the Supreme Court. But it is a subset of what we've been saying. It is what we've been demanding is caste census is exactly what the Supreme Court judgment is leading to. What does the caste census say? The caste census which the India Alliance parties are demanding are saying that you need to identify, first you need to do a X-ray or you need to do a census.
Excuse me.
And you need to find out details of each and every community, representation. And so the Supreme Court itself has given a green signal to what the caste census is about. Now, Zaka, look at the judgment. The judgment says that the benefits of the affirmative action are disproportionately being cornered by a certain segment of people. It is important to identify each one of them. And that judgment, the seven-bench judgment of the Supreme Court has made it clear. So my political opponents are opposing the caste census. The simple question is, what is wrong with it? It is identifying the benefits, saying that, look, in this case, the Mala and the Madiga community in Andhra, just as an example, or a particular tribal community. Let's take an example, the tribals. The most primitive groups among the tribal communities are very, very underrepresented. The scheduled caste, I'll talk to you on very interesting. There's a community called the Musairs and the Domes in Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and the Valmikis. Their representation is less than 0.5%. 0.5% is less, despite the population being over 6%. The total number of graduates of the Musair and Dome community is only 2,000 out of a 20 lakh population, less than 0.1%. So what the India Alliance has been saying, is that it's important.
Okay.
Identify, and the Supreme Court judgment is exactly what our political opponents would continuously beat around.
Okay.
And no, let me complete. I'll finish it off with one thing.
Yeah.
Most obnoxious statements is, when asking the caste, they say, why do you want the caste census when it is only the privileged, especially the upper caste, who have the audacity to ask the people of lower caste their caste. It is a caste issue. You have to never find people. No.
So let me open this up, Dr. Kumar, please. The other guests are also joining us. Sanju Verma. So the court has basically today said, in other words, that SC, STs cannot be considered integrated or homogeneous. Subclassification has to happen and it has to be supported by quantifiable data. So the only way you can implement today's order, if you have to subcategorize within SCs and STs, is if you first start enumerating them. So the opposition is saying, start by doing a caste census. The Supreme Court has now given you the go-ahead.
Zaka, let's not try and conflate issues. Point number one, the same Supreme Court which has today allowed for sub-classification of the various caste hierarchies that are prevalent in India. This is the same Supreme Court which in a landmark judgment way back in 1992 clearly said that reservation is fine, but reservation on the grounds of religion is absolutely unacceptable. So let's not say that Supreme Court ne jo aaj kaha hai, that gives a carte blanche to the Congress and its scion Rahul Gandhi to ask everybody and his or her uncle, kaun jaat ho? The second point, quota within quota is acceptable. That is what the Supreme Court is saying.
Yes.
And in defense of cooperative federalism, they have also gone so far as saying that states will now have enough ammunition and power at their disposal to ensure that a certain category is getting the benefits of reservation by virtue of being classified as, say, an OBC, a Dalit or an Adivasi, what have you. But let's not miss the woods for the trees. For the Congress to start jumping up and down is so much of balderdash, and I'll tell you why. A, has the Supreme Court said you can give reservation on the grounds of religion? No. What has the Congress been trying to do for the longest time? When it vouched for quota within quota in Andhra Pradesh way back in 2004-05, when it vouched for quota within quota in Tamil Nadu in 2007-08, or as recently as 2020-2021 when Uddhav Thackeray led Maha Vikas Aghadi was in power and they wanted quota within quota for Muslims. Each of these occasions, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, the Supreme Court came down heavily saying quota within quota on grounds of religion nahi chalega. And what
No,
has
but
Rahul
today's
Gandhi been
judgment
trying
is
to
not
do?
quota within quota on basis of religion. Today's judgment is saying quota within
I know
quota
that.
for
I
SCs
know
and
that.
STs. Yeah.
I
So,
know
no,
that,
answer a simple question for our viewers. As the spokesperson of the ruling party, is the BJP in favor of, as the court says, you cannot give subcategorization unless you have quantifiable data. How are you going to get that quantifiable data? By doing a census.
Zaka, I'm coming to that. Please bear with me. I'm coming to that. First and foremost, let's be very clear. Let us call out the hypocrisy of the Congress. Hypothetically, let me assume that the Supreme Court talking about a sub-classification tantamounts to the Supreme Court saying, "Theek hai bhai, caste census karwaiye." The two things are not same. But for a minute, let me hypothetically assume that theek hai. Unless there is an enumeration, unless there is a caste census, you cannot have a sub-classification. Let me take you at face value. I want to ask you one thing. Did the Congress conduct a caste census in 2011? Yes or no, Zaka? Yes. And at a cost of 5,600 crore. The Congress was in power till May 2014 for a good 3.5 years. Why did the Congress not make public the details of the caste census? Forget about the national caste census which was undertaken by the Congress in 2011. As recently as 2013-2014, the Congress is in power in Karnataka. Between 2013 and 2018, also it was the Congress which was in power in Karnataka. They conducted a caste census in Karnataka at a cost of almost 621 crore rupees. Have they made the details of the Karnataka caste census public? No. Then again, let me tell you one more thing. Is a caste census needed for enumeration? No. And I'll tell you why very humbly, Zaka. Do you remember the 102nd Amendment and the 127th Amendment?
Okay.
What do these two amendments do? These two amendments actually enumerate the various castes that are available within the public domain and categorize them as SCs, STs, OBCs, what have you, without having to go into the painstaking measure of having to undertake a very gargantuan caste census exercise nationally. I will tell you, for instance, 127th Amendment. Thanks to that, 671 OBC communities have come under the aegis of OBCs, and it is the states which will decide kaun OBC hai, kaun nahi. I want to ask you one thing. How is it that when the Congress is in power, prior to Karnataka elections, they said Lingayats versus Vocaligas. Prior to coming to power in Maharashtra, for the longest time, it has been the Congress or its allies that have ruled Maharashtra. They always play this card about Maratha versus non-Maratha.
Okay.
Haryana mein Jat versus non-Jat. But when they are in power, why is it that they never talk about OBCs?
Okay.
They never talk about Dalits. They never talk about Adivasis.
You still haven't given me the answer on whether the BJP is welcoming today's order, not welcoming today's order. Are you in favor of caste census? Are you not in favor of caste census? But anyway, let me move on to Ghanshyam Tiwari. Ghanshyam Tiwari, the one of the flaws, and I asked Mahesh Jethmalani, he didn't quite give me a straight answer to this question. You can't have two principles. Either quota within quota is permissible, as the court has today clearly said that quota within quota is allowed and that sub-classification amongst reserved categories is permissible, and there's a commonsensical reason for it, that SC, STs entire communities can't be considered as homogeneous. there are those, and I think Dr. Ajay Kumar gave the example of Domes and Mushahars, whose population are 6% and 9%, but their representation in government jobs or in educational institutions is less than 1%. Without going into that, my point is, so you can have quota within quota, as the court has argued today, and as the court has given out today in its judgment, but the same Supreme Court, when it came to 4% reservation in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, when it came to even the Karnataka example, when Basavaraj Bommai, a BJP chief minister, took away that 4% quota from Muslims and gave it to Lingayats and Vokaligas, struck it down on the principle of quota within quota. Today, the Supreme Court itself is going on that principle, turning that principle on its head. Vanshab Tiwari.
Good evening. Good evening, Zaka, to you, the viewers and the fellow co-panelists. The contradiction is there, and as a result, there is a lot of discussion, especially in the SC/ST community, on this contradiction. This decision of the Supreme Court will be vetted by the communities who are the most downtrodden, who deserve the greatest effort, collective effort of politics and policy, and this will be a discussion that will happen state by state. But as far as Samajwadi Party is concerned, our Member of Parliament Dharmendra Yadav has clearly welcomed this verdict. In contrast, there are two important points to note. One is that this verdict is in line with the idea of caste census. There is no doubt about it. Anybody can beat around the bush, but there is no doubt that this verdict is in line.
But Sanju Verma is saying that you don't need to do a caste census.
Exactly.
Amendment 127, 128, without caste census, you can enumerate and you can identify.
Coming to that.
Yeah.
It's not just Sanjeev Verma. If you are in alliance where there is no ability to take decision, you will call it as a no decision alliance. NDA. Here is the official stand of Lok Jan Shakti Party that was just released right now, an hour back. LJP is not in favor of Supreme Court's decision on reservation in subcategories for SC/ST categories. The party's founder, Ramvilas Paswan ji, has also been demanding that as long as there is a practice for untouchability against SCs and STs in society, there should not be any provision for reservation in subcategories.
No, sorry, who is saying this? Chirag Paswan is saying this.
Yes, LJP.
Okay.
Right? So now when you look at the stand of LJP with respect to this, then Sanju Verma ji, there's no connection, but she tried to connect this with the issue of Muslim reservation. The only party that campaigned aggressively on front foot for Muslim reservation is TDP, their other alliance partner. That is why if you want to talk about a no decision alliance, you can put on the map clearly the BJP. Now BJP often complains that Congress has not released caste census data in Karnataka. There are two important points on that, although it is unrelated. One, BJP claims to be in power by directly as or through allies in 17 or 18 states. Has it even tried a caste census in these states? Except Nitish Kumar, who's their ally, he's not even tried. Second, they accuse the Congress UPA 2 government for sitting on the caste census data. The UPA 2 government sat on the caste census data in 2011 from 2013 to 2014. Modi government has sat on that data for 10 years, and they continue to not talk about that data. So clearly, BJP's stand is the stand of this no decision alliance.
By the way, today, in an incidental matter, because we're talking about NDA allies, the original case, if you go back to the 2004 E.V. Chinnaya versus State of Andhra Pradesh judgment, the original case went back to a decision taken by Mr. Chandrababu Naidu in his term as Chief Minister between 1999 and 2004 to give Madiga reservation. It was challenged by a gentleman named E.V. Chinnaya, and the Supreme Court sided with the petitioner, saying that you cannot have subcategorization. So today, after 20 years, when the Supreme Court has overturned one of its own judgments, I presume that for someone like Chandrababu Naidu, it would be poetic justice, because he's waited 20 years for a decision of his that he took in the year 2000, which was struck down by the Supreme Court, to be now upheld by the same Supreme Court, but a bigger bench, a 7-judge bench. So Chandrababu Naidu will be today looking at it and saying that he was right, a decision that he took 24 years ago. But Tushar Gupta, let me come to the fundamental issue here, that as far as SC/ST reservations are concerned, the principle on which it was given was there were sections in this country who were historically, socially, economically, educationally, who were discriminated against, and therefore 15% for SCs and 7.5% for STs was given. The OBC reservation, which started from the late 80s, early 90s after the Mandal Commission report, was on a different principle altogether, which is why the whole idea of creamy layer came, because there is an economic rationale, and the rationale was arrived at as 8.5 lakh rupees or more, you become creamy layer, you don't get access to reservation benefits. can you apply that principle for sections like SC and ST, which, as Chirag Paswan, and Ghanshyam read his quote, Chirag Paswan has said, the principle is discrimination, not economically poor or not.
Good evening, Zaka. Look, we have to look at the overall observations of the Apex Court also. Interestingly, when this first act was made in year 2000 in Andhra Pradesh, the BJP too had a dozen odd MLAs in that state government with TDP. Now, if you look at the judgment from the court today, one, it speaks about the differentiation within the SC and ST groupings. It's not talking about discrimination from a social perspective. It's talking about discrimination from an economic perspective. For instance, the Supreme Court made this observation that if you look at the ward of an IAS who is an SC, and if you look at someone who's still into manual scavenging, can they both be termed as equal? Now, this is where the entire basis of today's judgment was, that within the SC and ST groupings also, there is a far more disparity than all of us recognize. And that is why a lot of minor groups within these SC and ST grouping get sidelined. Even the BJP in February, earlier this year, when Solicitor General Tushar Mehta was discussing this case in the Apex Court, he said, we stand for it. The BJP stance has always been clear. And back in February, even Rahul Gandhi was going pretty high with his pitch of Jitni Abadi Utna Haq. But I must also call out the false equivalence being drawn between the Congress's idea of caste census and the BJP, or whatever the judgment from the Apex Court is. Congress's idea of caste census is that there is a differentiation between the upper caste of the country and the lower caste of the country. Today's judgment is about solving the disparity between the caste within the SC grouping, within the overall SC grouping. So that's number one. Number two, we also talking about the creamy layer within the SC/ST, where Congress's caste census idea would not apply. The court is saying that a first generation of an SC family or an ST family has availed the benefits of reservation. They have succeeded in life. Their children, or perhaps the second or the third generation, do not need reservation. So the government should also start looking at a way where they are exempt from reservation. They are not a part of the affirmative action. So will the Congress agree with that idea also? That's something to be asked. Okay. Number three, we must understand that within the SC and ST grouping, as is the case with OBC also, there is a lot of heterogeneity in the sense there is an economic disparity, there's a social disparity as well. And a lot of people have pointed this out today in the wake of the judgment. So by doing this, even the court pointed out in one of the judgment, one of the justices said that we are not looking at it from a caste filter. We are looking at it from a Varna filter, where in the past, in ancient India, a lot of communities were assigned to certain occupations, and we see that a lot of them are not able to get out of it even today because of the inequality that exists. So when someone says this is the Congress caste census idea, I'm sorry, it's absolutely not. It is about solving the problem that none of us see within the SC and ST grouping, which is of inequality within the community.
So, Dr. Ajay Kumar, respond. Does the Congress's idea of a caste census also include enumerating those who are quote-unquote creamy layer within SC/ST and then taking them out of the purview of reservation?
So let me Tushar's narrative is totally off, because the Supreme Court firstly said, Tusharji, subcategorization apart from creamy layer. What is subcategorization? Madigas, Malas, Santalis, Kos. So first of all, your categorization, sir, your logic is totally wrong, because it is not only creamy, it is subcategorization, sir. And subcategorization means caste census. So you're wrong. Sanju Verma ji should immediately resign as spokesperson for one reason. JP Nadda is saying, I want caste census. Chandrababu Naidu says, I want Muslim reservation. So either she decides and says, I want, one second, let me complete my mind. I didn't interrupt you, I won't interrupt you, you should interrupt.
I'm laughing. Stop getting so intolerant.
Can I?
Interject you.
As usual,
I did not interject you. Stop getting so rattled.
Okay, let him finish his point. Yeah.
Stop getting so rattled.
Yeah, let him finish his point.
Shant ho jao.
Thank you. See, issue is, JP Nadda on your TV screen is running saying we are for caste census. You have a spokesperson saying we don't want caste census or caste census. Tuin Sinha was with me in the debate. He says we are in caste census. So, but BJP should stop lying. First of all, whoever comes, whatever they want to say on the TV channel is okay. Second issue is that they have so much of Muslim reservation and all. First, why don't they withdraw? Tell Chandrababu Naidu to go home. No, duplicity of the highest order. Ask Kumaraswamy to leave support. He also gave.
Zaka.
So let's complete, man. Kumaraswamy and Chandrababu Naidu, please
You
get
are
out.
not the anchor of the debate.
Can I complete? We don't want your support. Let the BJP say that. That is where the problem comes. The third issue, which I want to clearly highlight to you, it is the Congress idea, because when you do a social economic caste census, you will be able to identify the people, what is the economic condition, and it will be clear. It's an X-ray. They're second guessing that Congress has not said it. Third issue, the last point.
Okay. Quickly. Yeah. Quickly. I need to go to the others also. Quickly, sir, please.
2011, the caste census was started. It was only completed in 2013. And the government came in power in 2014. BJP sitting on...
Okay. Sanju Verma, please respond. Okay. Sanju Verma, respond to all of those points. Can we have a definitive answer? Is the BJP in favor of or against caste census? Yes or no?
Zaka, let me be very clear. With no offense to you, you are a very seasoned anchor. I refuse to have a gun to my head. You know, what Tuhin Sinha said, and what JP Nadda ji has said, what Sanju Verma is saying, this is an evolving discussion. But I will not take the easier route and say, oh, evolving discussion hai, to teen alag-alag log alag-alag baatein kar rahe hain. What did I say at the start of your debate? I said, given that enumeration is already possible under the 102nd Amendment and 127th Amendment, prima facie, a caste census is not needed for enumeration. Now, whether it will be done, whether it will not be done, whether allies will be taken on board or not, that is a discussion for another day. Point number one. Point number two, and let me be very clear with Dr. Ajay Kumar. You sit here and you wax eloquent about OBCs, about Dalits, about Adivasis, and Zaka. This is a story which was carried out by News18, a story carried out by India Today, Times of India, the Hindustan Times. After Draupadi Murmu became the president, prior to her becoming so, Ajay Kumar, and even after her becoming so, he said Draupadi Murmu represents the evil face of BJP and RSS. So for Ajay Kumar to say Sanju Verma ko resign karna chahiye, pehli baat to ye bhai sahab, you do not have any locus standi to demand Sanju Verma's resignation. Shant ho jao. Second point is this. I always say that don't miss the woods for the trees. The sub-classification is actually great news, and I'll tell you why. Why is it that the Madigas have not got, Dalit status, despite successive Congress governments in Telangana and Karnataka promising them? Because the sub-categorization never happened. At the same time, why is it that a Siddaramaiah has the audacity to go knock on the doors of the Supreme Court and say that out of the 6.5 crore population in Karnataka, 12.9%, the entire Muslim population of 84 lakhs, are OBCs? It is to do away with these kinds of charades that the Supreme Court has said that once there is a sub-classification of Dalits, of Adivasis, people like the Congress-led governments in Telangana and Karnataka cannot appease Muslims at the expense of Dalits, at the expense of
for the
OBCs,
record, Siddaramaiah has welcomed today's
Adivasis.
judgment, saying that this is something that he has been asking for. But quick closing comments. I have to wrap up. Ghanshyam Tiwari and then Tushar Gupta right after that. Please.
Zaka, the verdict of the Honorable Supreme Court is not vetted with the way the SC/ST community leaders and thinkers are speaking about it. For example, when you look at the Bihar experiment, which was led by Nitish Kumarji, who has flip-flopped between the alliances, of the 22 scheduled castes, there are 21 who eventually became part of Mahadalit. The subcategorization was done already. So when the power goes to the state and the subcategorization eventually becomes a political instrument, it will come under criticism or that is this an instrument to divide the Dalits and the STs on the matter of reservation. BJP will face the pinch because people of India, especially the OBCs and Dalits, believe that BJP is out there to finish off reservation. So with this verdict, BJP is going to face great political pinch, because the fear that BJP invokes that they are against reservation or they will finish off reservation will only grow stronger in the Dalits, Mahadalits, scheduled tribes.
Tushar, very quickly, I have to wrap up. I have to go to debate number 2 after this, please.
3 quick points. One, the fear that Ghanshyam Tiwari speaks about can be attributed to a deepfake video that was circulated during the elections. Number 2, every time Rahul Gandhi talks about caste, he talks about who is an SC, ST, OBC. He never gets into the subcategorization. He never makes an understand the inequality within the SC/ST groupings. Number 2. Point number 3, page number 8, point number 6 of the Congress Nyaya Patra released earlier this year had a hint of minority reservation, and this is where I want to correct Dr. Ajay Kumar. That's all.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests, but Sanju Verma will continue to stay on.